Hi, I'm Skip Barlow, and I want to welcome you to our cooking show, What's Cooking on the Cape. During our cooking show, we're going to go to many different places and look at a lot of different species and how to catch shellfish and how to find shellfish and how to find fish. And I want to share with you that a lot of observations that I've made during my very long, lifelong career as a coastal inshore fisherman. We may even sometimes go out of state and fish other places just to see what things happen there. I've been doing this for a long time. I really enjoy sharing our knowledge and our recipes and our schemes to catch shellfish with the general public, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're gonna hop in our old junk truck here, and we're gonna take off, and we're gonna go see what we can find out. So come on along. We have Little Buttermilk Bay. This hasn't changed too much in my lifetime. There's not a lot more houses here, not a lot of things different here, but underwater here in the nearshore coastal habitat, it's changed considerably. When I was young, this area was so productive on bay scalloping that the town lifted the limit. In other words, people were allowed 10 bushels per person per day to harvest here, and in the course of a season of harvesting bay scallops, by the middle of February, the scallops were still so dense in here, even though there were over 100 boats harvesting 20 bushels of bay scallops every day. The selectmen still, and the state, took the limit off completely, and people were allowed to take all they possibly could. I was a kid at the time, and of course my brothers and sisters and we all shucked scallops. And my parents had been bringing home 20 bushels a day, which was a big task. And all of a sudden they were bringing home 30 and 35 bushels a day. And it was just a tremendous task to get them all open. And we really worked hard at it. And they never did catch all the bay scallops that grew in this bay back in the early 60s. Within the next 10 years, bay scallops stopped growing in this bay. By the early 1970s, bay scallops, which had grown in this bay for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, no longer grew here. Not the dense quantities, not enough to recreational or commercial harvest. There were no more bay scallops in this bay. During the 1970s, there was hardly any shellfish taken out of here at all. And then, of course, in the early 1980s, an experimental program for clamming was started in this bay. The amount of increased dissolved oxygen in the water created by the hydraulic harvesting significantly increased the amount of some shellfish in the bay. Clam production increased from 6,000 pounds a year to well over 100,000 pounds a year. A few years later, quahog production significantly increased also. But in the mid-90s, that fishery of that particular type of action was again restricted, and now the production has fallen off considerably again. And we'll see what the next phase of the bay is as time goes on. Try to find some chowder quahogs. Those are the bigger quahogs. And we're going to take them back to the house, and we're going to make stuffed quahogs. Stuffed quahogs are pretty common here in the Cape. Everybody makes them different. We're going to use Diane Flynn's recipe today. It's an excellent recipe, and I really like the way she makes them. First, I'm going to explain to you a little bit about the kind of rake I'm using. This rake here is not real common on Cape Cod. Usually it's only the commercial fishermen that have a rake like this. Recreational people really don't use them. But you can buy these on the Lower Cape somewhere, probably Cape Fishermen's Supply. I bought this one 10 years ago, paid $115 for it. It's stainless steel. It'll probably last me the rest of my life. But this is a southern style push rake. what you see in New England most of the time is a pull rake with a big basket on it, so you get a bunch of rocks. For the Southern style push rake, you use like this. You put it down and you push it like a push broom. And you push it again. And you push it in and you push it along like that. And you can feel a quahog when you hit it. It feels different than a rock. When you hit the quahog, you pull it back towards you, and because of the angle of the teeth, it digs in almost by itself. So when you pull it back, it digs right down, and you get your quahog. Now there aren't any quahogs here on the beach, but often there are. But this area here is mostly soft-shell clams right in close to shore. This is a peck basket, and most towns on the Cape require you to get a peck of whatever you're harvesting. We're not going to get a peck today, we're only going to get a few because we only want to make a few stuffers. And this is a shellfish gauge. And the 1 inch distance in the center of this gauge is what you use to measure a small quahog. But we're not going to fish for small quahogs today, we're going to fish for big ones. And where do you find big quahogs? Well, quahogs can live to be 100 years old, and there's been a lot of fishing pressure on them for the last 50 years. So the only place you're going to find big quahogs are in areas that aren't accessible for commercial fishing, and they're tough for recreational shell fishing. An area like this channel here where the tide runs back and forth really hard isn't good for commercial access because the tide runs too hard and a man can't keep his boat still long enough to dig the quahogs. Recreational people generally like to go way up and back on clam flats and things like that, so they don't usually go out into the channel areas either because there's a lot of tide. Right now, the tide is almost ready to start coming. And it's easier to catch quahogs on a coming tide because quahogs feed when the tide is coming. They live in a little burrow and they go up and down a very small percentage of their shell size, maybe 25%. So a 4 inch quahog would go up and down an inch, but a 1 inch quahog would only go up and down a quarter of an inch. But when the tide comes, they push themselves up to feed. When the water temperature is much below 50 degrees, they don't go up and down at all because they're hibernating. But when the water temperature is at 50 degrees or above and they're not hibernating, they'll go up and down. Usually in April, when they come out of hibernation, they'll pop right out of the bottom sometimes. So I'm going to go out and see if I can find a few. Like I said, it takes about 50 to 100 years for a quahog to get to be a large quahog. You count the rings. Every time you find a well-defined growth ring, that generally represents a year. As the quahogs get older, those well-defined growth rings get really close together. And American biologists always felt that these quahogs live to be 50 or 60 years old. But the Chinese now are very involved in aquaculture and quahogs. And they believe they grow to be 100 years old, number one. And they also believe that by harvesting them in the first year or two of their life, they're not getting a sufficient opportunity to spawn. And that may be one of the reasons the quahog production has dissipated so much in the past 20 years. I don't know if you noticed, but along the shoreline, there's usually signs. They tell you if an area is open or closed. And you can see in the distance here, there's a sign that says the area is open. And most towns put signage up to indicate whether an area is open or closed. Most closed signs are red or orange, and they stand right out any time of year. Most open signs are green. Okay, we're back at the house now, and we're gonna prepare our stuffed quahogs, our stuffing for our quahogs, and we're gonna cook them. But first I want to show you how quahogs burrow. And this is what I was talking about earlier. This here is a picture of quahogs in the substrate. They've just been pulled out and strewn on the bottom so that they will have to burrow. Now you can see this little tail on this quahog. That's an inflatable foot. He has the ability to pump up a foot, and with it, he digs a burrow and he burrows along. And once he gets under the substrate, under the dirt, he'll upend himself so that his siphon can come up out of the bottom, and he can push himself up and down in his little burrow, usually about 25% of the size of his shell, when it's time to feed. So I'm going to move on now, and we'll cook the quahogs. Now there's several different ways that you could shuck these quahogs. You could shuck them with a knife and hold them like this and force the knife in to shuck them. But these quahogs, which have a muscle on each side, are really old and have a big muscle, and they're really tough to shuck by hand. So you could take them and put them in your freezer for a couple of hours and take them out, and they'll shuck really easy, because when they freeze, and they freeze solid, they gap a little bit and you can get your knife in and you can shuck them. Or you could put them in a pot of water and steam them for a few minutes and then shuck them. That takes a pot of water and usually about a half an hour to do that. Or you can put them in your little microwave tray here, like I have here. Put them in your microwave for about 5 or 6 minutes, maybe 8 minutes, depending on what you have for a microwave. And they'll steam open in their own juices. And then you can chop them up for your stuffers. And I'm going to put 4 or 5 in here, just enough so I can get the lid on. And I'll put them in the microwave, and I'll set the microwave for 6 minutes, and they should be cooked in 6 minutes. They should be more than cooked, but we'll try it. And they'll steam in their own juices. So I'm going to set that for 6 minutes, and that's going to run. And I'm going to start cutting my vegetables. I've got 3 peppers and an onion and linguiça. I'm going to chop up a half of each pepper, probably a half of an onion, and dice it up real small. And then I'm going to put all this and a couple of pieces of linguiça all together and mix them all together in this bowl here. I'll mix them together in this bowl, and when the quahogs are done cooking and I take them out to shuck them and chop them, I'll put all these vegetables in that microwave pan, and we'll cook them in the microwave oven also. So I'll start right off with the linguiça. Now I cut it in about 3-inch strips, and these 2 pieces ought to be enough for the amount that we're making today, or I'll make 3. You peel all the skin off of it, then you can chop it up, and you don't have to make the pieces too small. I'll show you about how big you want them. If you can see these, that's about as small as I like them. You can make them a little smaller if you'd like. Some people like to make the pieces. You can actually quarter the linguiça. And again, that's a smaller piece. I get this one done. When I do the peppers, I'm going to only use about 1/3 of each pepper, 1/3 to 1/2 of each pepper, because we're only going to make a small amount of stuffers. So I'll just take the core out of the pepper, put it in here, cut it not quite in half, about in 1/3. And we'll use 1/3 of each pepper. I might look like I'm going a little fast here, but I am on a time schedule. Now, you want to get all the seeds out of your pepper. Make sure you get them out. going to use half an onion. So it's kind of an arbitrary decision, but that's life. I'm going to set the onion over here for now, because it's going to make me cry. And I'm going to work on these peppers. Same thing. I cut them with the skin on the outside, quite simply because it's easy to cut them that way. And I, again, dice them up, not too small, but not too big. When they cook, the pepper's going to get soft anyway, so you don't have to make it real small. And you could use just one colored pepper if you wanted. I like all the different colors for makes them look a little more appetizing when you're done. They all taste the same. They seem to me. When they get upside down, they get hard to cut. The best part about these quahogs, once you get them stuffed, is that you can freeze them and then heat them up whenever you want them. And they're good for, like, if you're watching football games or basketball games or whatever on Sunday afternoon. You just grab one out of the oven, out of the freezer, and you put it in the microwave for about 4 minutes and heat it up, and you can eat it. They're a real nice snack to have around. Our quahogs should be all cooked, and we'll chop them next while these vegetables are cooking. Okay, we're going to put our peppers in here. Now the microwave has shut off. Put all the rest of the peppers in here. Now the microwave has shut off, so I'm going to take the quahogs out and we'll see if they're cooked. Now you can tell the quahog's cooked when the shell's gapped open. And those quahogs are cooked and their shells are gapped open. And I'm going to put them in this tray right here to cool off for a minute. And I'm going to put my juice, the juice from the quahogs is now in here. You saw me put the quahogs in, I didn't add any water. This is all the juice that came out of those quahogs. I'm just going to rinse this out because there's a little sand in here. And then we're going to put our vegetables and linguiça, peppers and linguiça and onions. I got to chop my onion up yet. All in here. So I'll set this out of the way. Just going to chop up my onion. And again, I just use about 1/3 of the onion, just like I did with everything else. And I'll dice it up real quick. Now they say onions make you cry. I guess they do. But I seem to be having a good day, and I'm not crying. Yeah. So we're going to put our onions in here, and we're going to put this in to cook. I'll cook this for 6 minutes too. That makes it easy for us to remember. And I'll put this in. These happen to be chicken flavored, and I like that. And they're really light when you make them. But there's some people like to make their stuffed quahogs really heavy and really wet, and I don't like them that way. I like them kind of light. And of course, hot sauce is really good stuffed quahogs. Everybody likes, or most people put hot sauce in. We put some in, or I put some in, but then usually people will add more hot sauce when they're eating them. I kind of like a stuffed quahog just without the hot sauce with a pat of butter stuffed in it. I like that. That's what I enjoy. A little earlier in the show I was talking about how scallops used to live really good up in Buttermilk Bay. And they don't live there anymore, but part of the change in the environment that's happened in the past 20 years is algae blooms. Algae blooms are, algae has always lived in the water column, but during the last 20 years or so, algae blooms have become really excessive, and it's kind of like a perpetual motion machine. What happens is, and I'm going to pick up a picture here, Diane may be able to zoom in on it. This is what an algae bloom looks like in the coastal habitat. It looks like cotton candy laying on the bottom of the ocean. It doesn't really grow, pile up well in areas where there's a lot of tide. You know, in channel areas. In channel areas, what looks like cotton candy gets moved up into the areas where the tide doesn't move and circulate so much. But in the areas where the tide doesn't move and circulate as much, algae blooms build up on the bottom of the ocean. And they look like cotton candy, and they keep getting higher. And in order for them to degrade, they need oxygen to break down and degrade and decompose. So what happens is, they decompose from the bottom up. So they lay on the bottom of the ocean, and they start to degrade at the base of where the pile is. And as they degrade and use the oxygen up, things like clams and crabs and quahogs that live in the substrate, they also need that dissolved oxygen. Well, it isn't there for them to thrive on. It makes it difficult for them to live. It also makes it difficult for the algae bloom to degrade. The less oxygen there is there for it to degenerate and to degrade and decompose, the longer it takes for it to decompose. And the longer it takes, the more the algae blooms build up. It's kind of an interesting scenario, but it's really bad for the coastal habitat. Alright, I put my vegetables in the microwave, and now the quahogs have cooled down a little bit, and I'm going to cut those mussels like I said I would. You don't want to really break the shells if you don't have to, because you want to stuff these. So you take your quahogs out, then you have a shell that you're going to stuff. So now that they're all shucked, and that didn't take long, you can run them through a meat grinder if you want, but I don't like to do that. I just like to chop them up, because I like my stuffed quahogs to have chunks of quahogs in them. And you got to remember that these larger quahogs are getting harder and harder to come by, and they're more valuable. You know, it was 10 years ago, commercial fishermen could hardly give chartered quahogs away, and now they're getting kind of pricey. They're up around $1.50 a pound to buy them if you wanted to buy them. 10 years ago they were worth about $0.05 a pound. So these are all cut up and chopped up, and we'll mix it all together. We'll mix it in this pan where I already put the juice. So we'll put the chopped up quahogs in there. All our vegetables, which we just took out of the microwave. And you can see they're all cooked up pretty good, and it's hot. You can put them in there too. And it is hot, don't let anybody kid you. And we're going to mix it all together. And this is about, and I don't know if you can see from the camera, what it would look like all mixed together. but we haven't put the bread stuffing in here yet. That's just the meat and vegetables. And it's all cooked and it's all mixed together. But now, we're going to put bread in there. This is, I'm going to mix it up. Still kind of warm. To make our stuffing. I'm going to put a little more. And this is just to what you want to do. You can make it any way you want. You don't want to put in so much that it's dry. You want it to stay moist. And this again is just about what it looks like when it's got the bread and added to it. So you've added your breadcrumbs, and you have linguiça, and pepper, and quahogs, and onions. And of course the bread. Now you stuff your quahogs. In the real world you'd let this cool down a little bit, but right here, this is what we're going to do. That's about one serving right there. I don't know if you can see that well, but that's a stuffed quahog. Now, you would put that in the refrigerator and you wrap them individually in plastic bags and freeze them. Then you could take them out and put them in the microwave for about 4 minutes. And actually, I forgot one step. I forgot to add the hot sauce. I want to add the hot sauce right now, about that much. Maybe a little more. I don't want it so hot that it's going to be hard for me to eat it. If you want more hot sauce and you like hot sauce, you add more. I'm going to mix that up even that much better. It mixes good now that it's cooled off a little bit. So we've got the hot sauce in here also. If you don't like hot sauce, don't put it in. Now you take your quahog, scoop it up. Again, I'm going to set it right here on the table. There's one. You can wash these out if you want, but they're really clean because it just came out of the microwave in there. But it's up to you. There's two. I want to keep doing this, but I'm going to put one in the microwave and just to heat it up. Good enough. So you can see what they look like when they come out and you wanted to eat one. And I'll just put it in there. Again, in this tray, just set it in there. And because it's not frozen, I'll put it in for about a minute. I wouldn't put it in for more than a minute. But these here, I'll keep filling them. There'll be plenty of stuffing. Actually, I don't have to fill anymore. This is what it looks like when it's all ready to eat and all cooked. Take a little pat of butter, put it right in the middle, and it's perfect. And I'm going to set it here and just let it cool for a second, which looks delicious. I know it is. You know, I eat these all the time. I love them. This is perfect. These are really good. And they are perfect. This is it for today. I look forward to seeing you again on What's Cooking on the Cape. Take care.